Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now, I've got a very special guest. She is a Nitro Girl, formerly a Nitro Girl of WCW, businesswoman, entrepreneur, mother, and we've just got so much to talk about. I'm pleased to welcome the one, the only, Chae Marsh. Welcome, Chae, to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. And you've got such an incredible story. Tell me about your childhood and upbringing.
Well, I'm first generation Korean American. I was 11 years old when my family and I came to the States, and I have two older brothers. So it when I was in first grade, my aunt who lived, my dad's older sister who lived in the States at the time, she was a citizen. She sponsored us, and when I was in fifth grade, the visas were granted for our family. So it took about 4 years from applying for the visa to getting accepted. So about December of 83, long time ago, we made the journey across the Pacific and came to the States. And at the time, I didn't know how to speak any English at all. And those couple months that, from when we found out to when we left, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to learn how to speak English at some point. So at the time, back in the early 80s, early mid 80s, the two most popular shows were Dynasty and Dallas. So you could imagine, so I started to watch, it's, because they had those shows for the US military in Korea. So I started kind of watching it thinking, that I'm gonna pick up a few words here and there. Well, I didn't pick up many words. Instead, I picked up this vision of what my life would be from watching Dallas and Dynasty, right? Having horses, riding horses all day, and going to parties at night. I mean, just being 11, just being so naive, and that's really what I thought my life in the U.S. was going to be. Needless to say, we landed in suburban of Detroit, Michigan, in middle of December. So it was far cry from the South Fork of Texas, right? That I saw in Dallas or Dynasty. But so anyway, so that's when we came. It was quite a journey. I was thrown into school right away after that December break. But my teacher that I was going to go into the class that I was going to go to, she knew that I was going to come. So over her winter break, she prepared, I guess you could say, books on tape, where she would take, several books, and she read the book slowly and made tape recorder of herself. So my first year, it was elementary school, was just listening to the books on tape, and while the other kids did like other subjects, the only time that I kind of jumped in was in math, because obviously number is universal, right? And so that's kind of how it all started. I walked around with a dictionary about that thick. One half was English to Korean, and the other, if you flip it, the other is Korean to English. So it was just learning that way and just being in the middle of the environment and just translating word for word, every subject, every word, every conversation. And it, I would say, it took about good 2 years to be able to really have a decent conversation and be able to communicate, and for my schoolwork to finally come up to the par with my peers.
And the
Yeah.
cool thing is now you got like Rosetta Stone and all these different
Right.
apps you can use to just
iPhones. You just say what you want and it just translates it like that, right? Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Did you notice any cultural differences? You had mentioned you had to get you got your visa when you were in fifth grade, but so you had to have remembered, being, halfway across the world and then making your journey to this new country. I mean, did you pick up any cultural differences that you had noticed?
It wasn't completely foreign, just because obviously um, the Western world wasn't, you know, new to us through movies and TV shows, right?
Hmm.
But so I knew what I was, going into. Um, but I think adapting to the new culture wasn't hard at all because from what I came from, everything was much more forward, advanced, developed, more comfortable
Hmm.
in that sense. But what was tougher wasn't the new culture, adapting to new culture, but it was seeing myself getting integrated to this new culture because I saw myself as such an outsider. And obviously, and looking back, I don't, you know, looking back, I realize, especially with kids, they're just gonna pick on you no matter what, And at the time, it, obviously, kids are gonna pick on you for the obvious things, whether you're too tall, too short, too wide, too narrow, glasses or whatnot. But when it's happening to me, and when I'm so aware of such a difference in culture, in the language, and the way I look, I really took it personally. I took it very deeply, But in hindsight, looking back, it's at the time it was hurtful, but now that it's not. I completely understand, the dynamics of it all. Um, so, and I just remember, being like 11-year-old. I just remember crying at night, right? And I would just say, God, if you knew that this is where I was going to live all my life, why can't I look like the Jane next door? Just why do I have to look different? And unfortunately, and I wish, in a way, my parents, when they came, there were such a blinders on for survival, right? And they didn't speak English either. And I always say immigrants come either as scholars or blue collars, right? Some people come as doctors or they come through universities as professors and whatnot. But a majority of people, they come as blue collars. They don't come with much money and they just come pursuing the American dream, the promise of it. And so when we came, so my parents were just really focused on, their focus was like, you know, providing a roof over our heads and food on the table. So unfortunately, I didn't really have somebody to sit there and tell me, you are special, you are unique, unique is good. And I just kind of navigated through all that on my own, kind of feeling like an outcast and why do I have to be so different? And I didn't really embrace my uniqueness, my difference until really way later, probably in my 20s, unfortunately. So
Wow.
that was probably the toughest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, moving to a new school, moving to a new state, city, country, and just having to deal with all that. I'm very sorry you had to go through all that.
Oh, no, no. I obviously, I look at my life now and I'm so blessed and my life would be completely different. Um, I would think if I had my parents hadn't been able to bring us here to the States. So,
Yeah.
I'm just blessed. Yeah.
When you were growing up, going through all that stuff, what were like your escapes, to not think about all that
Um,
hoopla?
I know, right? I really didn't have escapes. Again, I don't really blame my parents whatsoever. Like I said, they worked multiple blue collar jobs, and they worked into the weekends. So in a way, my brothers and I have two older brothers. We kind of fend for ourselves, and so there really wasn't an escape, unfortunately. But what had happened was, after about a year, we moved in with my aunt when we first came. My aunt, she didn't have any kids, so we just kind of basically took over her basement because up north, I don't know where you are, but everybody has basements, right? So we just kind of took over the basement. So we were there for about a year, and my parents were able to save enough money to buy their very, very first home. And again, I have to also add, I have such a gratitude for this country because if you really work hard and if you really prioritize your life and work hard, there's really nothing you can't achieve. And my parents, they were in their mid 30s. They worked all their lives, and as hard as they could never afford a home of their own. But we come to the States and they focus, they put in a whole year of just hard work. And not only were they able to save up money, and also too grateful for my aunt who just really kept our expenses low. Not only that, like this country, you go to a bank and they trust you enough to loan you this large sum of money so you can buy your home. So I still cry. Like our kids, they play multiple sports. Whenever like the anthem comes, like it doesn't matter if it's my 100th time at a ballpark listening to the anthem, I always get choked up just because I'm just so grateful for just the way this country provides for its people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think I deviated from your question. I don't know what the question was.
Was there anything that you liked to do growing up that just
Oh,
took you away from all that
no
stuff
way.
that you wanted to focus on?
So okay, I know what it was. So after about a year, we moved out of my aunt's house and we moved a little bit up north, and we ended up in a town called Sterling Heights, Michigan. And and then when I started seventh grade, middle school, I could communicate well enough. And in gym class, I learned how to play sports. Because in Korea, you don't play sports. I mean, I don't know how it is now, but back then, like if you have free time, you're gonna go get tutoring. You're gonna focus on academics. You don't ever play sports. So I learned how to play basketball and volleyball in gym class. And next thing you know, there's like a tryout for the school basketball team and tryout for school volleyball team. And I'm like, oh, let me just try it. So I would try out, but I was never good enough to start or play much of the games. But I I guess I kind of got enough of it to actually make the team. So those kind of things I think really it helped me occupy my time and just be able to connect and feel like I actually belong somewhere. Not because they have to accept me to this school or, because it's public school. You
Right.
can't say no.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to belong, try out, and actually somebody feel that I'm good enough to be a part of this selected group of basketball team or whatever. I think that was a big thing for me.
And that later spawned off into dancing too. What made you decide to get involved with that?
So that was seventh grade, and going up to eighth grade, again, I was very naive. They say that ignorance is bliss. In this case, it was because everybody knows the whole dynamics of like cheerleaders, right? They're supposed to be some out of mean girls, or they're cliquey, or they're the popular girls. But for me, I didn't know any of those dynamics. I was just barely getting by with my dictionary and, just barely just communicating. So I didn't know the dynamics or whatnot. But when this thing came up about trying out for the following year, eighth grade cheerleading, and I'm like, oh, that looks fun. I tried out for basketball and volleyball, and I think I can make cheerleading. So I tried out for cheerleading. Well, it turns out like there were 10 girls on the seventh grade team, and I knocked out one girl, and I was only the new girl.
Wow.
But again, at the time, I just had no idea what that was. It just looked fun, right? So that's how I got into cheerleading. And then I cheered in eighth grade and then cheered in ninth grade. And then our high school also had a dance team. So in 10th grade, the dancing looked a lot more fun than cheerleading. So I changed to dance in 10th grade. And then I danced 10th and 11th until I moved to Savannah before my senior year. So luckily, and again, with no, background in dancing, I guess I was just coordinated. I had, one right foot and one left foot, not two of each. You know what I mean? So I think,
Well, dancing, much like sports, much like everything else. I mean, it really is hard work. It's an art form, but it takes a lot of discipline. What was it like for you being able to? You just talked about the coordination. Was it hard at first trying to learn all those steps?
um, no, I don't remember it being hard. Um, it's it's fine. Okay, hang on, sorry. Um, no, I don't remember it being hard. I think it came, unfortunately, it came naturally.
Hmm.
Yeah, it came naturally. And, just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get. And I think the best part was the fact that I started with cheerleading, which the movement is not as fluid as dance, and it's not as fast paced as dance. So had I jumped right into dancing, I don't know if I would have done as well. But I think cheerleading was like a nice couple of years of the stepping stone into dance. So
When did the call from the Atlanta Falcons come to try out for the
yeah.
dance team?
So my parents and we moved to Savannah because basically my parents said, because they were again working blue collar jobs, and both my brothers were attending U of M, Michigan, and they told me about summer before my senior year. Right now we're barely getting by with your brothers in college, two of them. And when you go to college in about a year, we don't know if we'll be able to afford you going to college. So we're gonna have to, think of different way to earn a living. And luckily, my dad had a friend around Michigan that had a bunch of beauty supply stores, and he was gracious enough to extend the credits of his vendors to my dad if he were to open up a store, same beauty supply store. But he said, obviously, you can't open one up around here because then you'd be my competitor. So we thought, okay, what are we gonna do? So back then it's those folding maps that you can't, once you open it, you can't put it back.
Right.
So we just
Hmm.
kind of laid it out. We're like, okay, do you want to take a trip down to, you know, down south to explore different towns? So my parents and we grabbed the map and got in the car, and summer before my senior year, our first stop was Savannah. We wanted the coastal cities. And then we went to Jacksonville, we went to Mobile, Alabama, and then I think, actually stopped in Jackson on the way back up. And what we would do is we would go to those cities, look at Yellow Book, back then, those yellow,
Hmm.
yellow pages, and look for the beauty supplies in the area and see how many beauty supplies there are. We would even do a little drive-by, and we would pick up apartment finder books from all those cities. And we came back up, and it took us like a couple weeks. We threw everything on the dining room table and we're like, okay, where are we gonna go? And so we just decided, okay, you know what? We're gonna go to, did you like Savannah? Yeah, I like Savannah. Did you like Savannah? Yeah, it was cute. So we're like, okay, let's go to Savannah. That's kind of like how it was, almost like throwing tea leaves in the wind and see whichever falls, right?
Hmm.
So I called, well, at the time my parents still didn't know how to speak English well they um because they always worked blue collar jobs where they were pretty isolated. So I'm the one that had to make all the calls for apartments. And then once we moved to Savannah, I'm the one that had to go to City Hall, So long story short, I couldn't go out of, even though after high school, I really couldn't, now that they were in a business where they need somebody to be able to communicate for them, I couldn't go away to college. So I stayed in Savannah. I went to a small college in Savannah while I was attending. I went to visit a friend in Atlanta, somebody that lived in Savannah and just moved to Atlanta. I went to go visit them. And somehow I found out that Falcons was having a like a workshop, pre-tryout workshop. And I'm like, oh, just like, back in seventh grade, I'm like, oh, sounds fun. Let me try it. So I went to the workshop, and the girls there, the cheerleaders at the time, they were so nice, they were so welcoming. So I'm like, okay, and I got the courage to go back the following week and try out. So I tried out, and I made the team. So I came back and I told my parents, can I please move to Atlanta? Because at the time we've had our business for about 4 years. So it was pretty much kind of on autopilot. They kind of had the structure set, and they told me, yeah, you've done enough for us in the family, and I think, now you can go. So I never looked back. So
And then I'm sure that had to prepare you for WCW and the Nitro Girls dance team as well.
yes, yes. So AC Jazz, she I didn't cheer with her. She left before I got on the Falcons. So AC Jazz and Spice Melissa, they both worked out, and also Terry Fire. They all worked out at main event. So they knew everybody was a main event at the time. Paige was, Kimberly, Luger, Sting. I mean, it was Sting and Luger's gym. So everybody worked out there. And when Kim got the project to start create a group, Kim knew Amy was an ex-Falcons cheerleader, and Kim knew Melissa at the time. She was a dancer for Life College, which is a chiropractic school. So Kim knew that both of them were dancers. So they, in a way, didn't even have to try out. So Kim just went to them and said, okay, heck, so I'm putting together a group of girls. I want you guys to be a part of it. And can you please help me find more dancers? So from there, through their contacts, Melissa and Amy, they put together different tryouts. And of course, Amy reached out to her friends at the Falcons, and we got the word saying, hey, there's some kind of because like for us as entertainers and dancers, we go to auditions for different things, whether it's a music video or because in Atlanta. So we were told there was a audition for a dance team for a TV show. We're like, okay, well, that sounds pretty cool. So a bunch of us went and tried out. And from there, that's when I got a Nitro. And at the time, I didn't even know what Nitro was. I knew Hulk Hogan just because my grandparents watched them. Like, I just knew the name, but I didn't know anything about wrestling, let alone Nitro.
I mean, going from dancing for the Atlanta Falcons, which is huge in its own right, to being on this prime time nationally televised show. I mean, that's got to be high pressure.
What's so funny is it never, the crazy part is, as wrestlers, they train to get that spot on TV.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much work that they go into, and they know exactly what they're getting into, and they work so hard for it. But with us, a lot of the girls who love to dance, you have to have a main job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa was a professional. Melissa was a chiropractor. Everybody kind of had their main job, but our passion, our side thing was dance. So in a way, it's like we never really understood the whole mentality of the whole wrestling, because that's not what we ever really went for. We just wanted to dance,
Right.
and if that makes sense. Um, so it really wasn't so if you can, I mean, this is so bad to say, but like the girls that all came together, we were actually like, well, except, well, I guess you could say that I was also a professional because actually I was running my parents' business.
Hmm.
At one point we had 3 stores and I was managing the business and stuff. So it was like professionals that came together for the love of entertaining and dancing. So in a way, we didn't really feel pressured because, not to
Right.
mention, because here's the thing, I think it's completely different. We had a different role than the wrestlers did. Because wrestlers, not only do they have to think about their work in the ring, they got to think about their character. They got to think about cutting good promos. They got to think about just being catchy and, you know, just being so energetic. But for us, we just kind of go out with a smile on our face, and we practice enough where we probably could do our routines with our eyes closed and we just come off. So it
Right.
really wasn't, yeah. So obviously all the girls that's been dancing, we're used to the stage, we're used to the audience. So it never really, it doesn't, it obviously, it got very big, but even so then we just never thought of it as being anything. We always stayed humbled. We knew we weren't the main dish. We knew we weren't even the side dish. We were just garnish.
Well, you were
Uh,
still an important part of the show. I mean, people obviously still remember the Nitro Girls years later as a big part of WCW
I
programming
hope so. Yes,
through
yes.
the years. I mean, do you still hear from fans or hear from people at conventions being
Right,
like, "I remember you. You were one of my favorite dancers," or "You're my
right.
favorite"?
We do. We do. We do. We've done different shows here and there. I think the most recent was maybe 3 years ago. It was Kimberly was there, and Fire and Spice and I, we did a show, and it's just amazing. It's very humbling and mind-boggling at the same time for people to come up, but it's so at the same time, it's like, you know, it it's unbelievable because they come up, they're like, "Oh, you were my favorite Nitro Girl. I watched you when I was 15." And this is coming from a guy that's probably 40. Or even, in his mid, yeah, probably 40. So it's really neat because initially once we got off the show, there was a big demand for us. And then it was kind of quiet for a while, but the demand kind of picked up, the last, handful of years. And I think it's because about 20 years, I think, is the time when things become very nostalgic.
Hmm.
When you're 10 years old, all of a sudden now you're 30, 35, and you look back and all of a sudden we are part of this person's childhood where they remember sitting around maybe with their grandparents or maybe with their dad or even with their friends. It was like their ritual of Monday night, and they see it as such a time of coming together and having fun. So, and when they look back in their childhood, we also become one of their childhood. Because if you think about it, whenever there's any kind of remake, Friends, they didn't do a remake until about 20 years after they went off air. So I think 20 years is about the time when um when we just kind of when we're kind of when we become somewhat relevant because we become now we're like nostalgia.
What was it? Were there like favorite places to go see when you were traveling around the world with your friends?
Probably the favorite thing was Australia, obviously, right? Because I
Hmm.
mean, just if it took us probably 24 hours to get there. Just that alone, you feel like you're just going to the opposite end of the world, where otherwise you would never had the opportunity to go. And it was right after the Sydney Olympics, so you just heard and saw so much of it, and now you get to go there, and it was great. And it was just most amazing thing. We landed in Sydney. No, it wasn't. Yeah, we landed in Brisbane the first time, and you're at the opposite end of the world. Think about it. It's so opposite that when it's winter here, it's summer there. When it's
Yeah,
summer here, it's winter, right?
it's
So,
crazy.
so I just remember, we were all like rolling our thing out of into the baggage claim, and people were calling our names. And we thought initially, like somebody, maybe one of our coworkers, people that, somebody from production, maybe they were calling us. So we're just looking around for a familiar face, but it wasn't. It was the fans, and we're just like, they know us? Yeah, so yeah.
It's so cool to
Yeah.
have, those are memories that'll last a lifetime. You can tell your kids and just, oh man, it's just amazing.
It is. It really is a nice feather in your cap,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of wrestling. I know you've been involved with a lot of charities, done a lot of charity work, and you've got your own business. Talk about some of the things that you've done to help out in your community.
Well, I'm just very involved anything that has to do through our kids and their school. When it's and our church, whether it's Toys for Tots or stuffing shoe boxes, for of Christmas presents to be sent, to third world or kids in other parts of the world. But my main focus really has been our kids and things that we can explore and experience together, um, through charity, through church, and such. And my business, again, it's like I our kids, I just wish that the business part came either way before or maybe even a few years from now, but it's just been really tough trying to balance, between, because with three kids and right now it's like such a busy time, and we're so blessed. They're great kids. They are great academically and they're very athletic. So they're in multiple sports. So it's really hard to carve out the time for business, but sometimes I have to take a step forward and two steps back, but it's still in the works, but I haven't been really able to put too much time into it.
Was there a particular charity or thing that you were able to do with your family that was just so heartwarming?
Um, what we do is it's not so much through an organization, but we do things in a way, we create things on our own. Like for instance, we're we're big Christians, and my husband ordered those small Bibles. And what we do is we put $5 in every one of those little Bibles, and we have a water bottle, and we have a big box of it behind our seat in my car, in my husband's car. And whenever we're out and we see somebody in the corner, I mean, it's probably like one of the favorite things our youngest, he's 11, his name is Garrett, loves to do is pass out the Bible with the $5 and bottle of water to the person that's, seeking help.
Aw.
Things like that. Like, that's the kind of things we do. And also, um, people that are in our lives, we focus on people that are in our lives, right? We feel like we're crossing paths for a reason. Like for instance, at one of our daughter's softball games, there was this umpire there, and he had three kids. And as he was working the game, he had three kids, and some of the moms, that were there, they were helping out with the kids. I mean, I think the kids' ages were like maybe 2 and 4, and maybe the other one was 5. I just remember after the game, he put the two little ones in a wagon, and then the oldest, probably 5, held onto the side of the wagon, and he was pulling the kids back to the car to leave. And I saw that, and I couldn't get that sight out of my mind. So I ended up contacting the organization, and this gentleman had a distinctive look. So I was able to find out who it was. And what we did was, it was around Christmas time, and we contacted him, and we said, we'd like to bless you. And so we just sent donated some money to him, just to kind of help out with the cost of Christmas and stuff. So those are the kind of things we
Yeah.
do. It's more personal, and because we tie to our church, and we trust that the church will just do their best with the money that we give them. So we let them do what they do, and we support them financially. But on a side, that's kind of like what we do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always nice to give back, you know. You just never know what somebody's going through in their life. And for you, what is it about giving back that is just important?
So giving back is, people say that I saw this, like the saying, money doesn't buy happiness, right? And and then I saw something that's even better. It said money but doesn't buy happiness until you give it away, right? And I think it's just universal. I think that anybody you wouldn't have a heart beating in you if you didn't feel that warmth in your heart when you actually give. You know what I mean? And for me, I'm I've been through a lot of things, and everybody has, right? And I've been through good times and I've been through really hard times, and I've never once ever thought during those hard times I still always felt blessed. And let me tell you, I'm blessed to be in this country. I'm blessed to have what I have, and it's hard, but glass is half full. You know what I mean? And it's just making the conscious decision to always look at it as half full. Even if it's quarter full, it's still quarter full. You know what I mean? It's not almost empty. And I think that's kind of what I think I'm just, the best way to say is I've always been full of gratitude no matter what. Kind of circling back, how I told you back when I didn't appreciate my uniqueness, my difference, right? It really wasn't until I would say I knew cheerleading. It was a big deal because I don't think that at the time until then they've had any Asian cheerleaders and the Falcons. And come to find out when I walked into the workshop, and when the director saw like an Asian girl walk into the workshop, and that's kind of really, I mean, I'm sure they needed to really check the box. And I am not offended by that whatsoever. I've always said I always said I was a token Asian girl, and I don't mind it. But anyway, and come to find out that they kept an eye on me to make sure that, if she can dance, we need to make sure she comes back and tries out. So, that was good. And then obviously with Kimberly, her main focus was creating a diverse group of girls. And even with the Falcons, when they create four separate group of girls for corners of the field, they try to make sure that you blend in all the flavors for everybody. You know what I mean? Like you try to kind of even out everything. And same thing, at the time when Nitro Girls came along, Spice Girls were very popular. So Kimberly knew exactly what she wanted. So that's why you had a redhead. That's why you had, African American girl, and that's why, you had Asian girl. And, and that's when I realized, wow, it isn't really, it's not a bad thing to be different, and again, it's being unique. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are your kids big wrestling fans too?
They're not into, no, and that's not on purpose either. I think they just always been into sports that I don't think we really have time. I do know we've been to a couple shows, and they love it for the novelty reason, but and obviously they know all the big names, right? And because they know the big names that's made it out of the the ring onto the big screen,
Yeah.
right? That, and they know where they came from. But they wouldn't turn down a nice ticket, to
No.
the show coming into town, maybe from Booker T and Charmel, but it's not something that,
Yeah.
that we go out of our way for.
Yeah. Well, Shay, this has been great. Getting the chance to speak with you means a lot to me and to my
Thanks,
listeners and
Stanley.
viewers. You're welcome. Thank you so much. And where can people find more about you, your business, and if they want to get in touch with anything coming up?
Well, right now I just have Instagram, which is I think it's like Che_Marsh. And I'm not too active on it. I try to be, because somebody that I spoke to about the business, they said that you have to have social media presence. I'm like, but I don't like posting what I'm eating for lunch. No, but I'm trying to be funny. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I do have Instagram. It's fun. I just kind of post once in a while. But yeah, that's probably good. And then from there you can stay connected. And if there's other projects or when I finally launch my business, I could, communicate through that.
Yes. And we'd love to have you come on again. So you're more than welcome to come back.
Sure. And next time I'm with, like, because I still go visit the girls. I go to if I go to Charlotte, I get to, most of the times I see Tigress, Fire, and Spice. We're always usually together. So if I know that opportunity is coming, I will let you know, and then we can set up something like that.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks
Yeah,
again.
I would. Yes, sure thing.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.